The show is brought to you by Rudus Metal Detectors, makers of the Alter 71. Discover new possibilities at rudus.com.pl.
Helping hundreds of people annoy their families while driving in a car. This is the GDA Radio Podcast.
Killed my family, digging for gold. All we found was a tragedy. Cold is the night, and dark are the days, and the stone-hearted people are laughing in my face. Oh, these are the hands that used to be the remedy. Just before the scene turned into a tragic comedy. Dead are the dreams, they've come to an end. There's nothing more to gain, nothing to pretend.
You're currently listening to the soothing sounds of Tg Copperfield from his brand new album released this last Saturday, and it's called Magnolia. The song is called They Put the Fire Out. This is a world premiere for this song. It has never been aired prior to us playing it today. For those of you who know, Tg Copperfield is a friend of mine I met at a music festival. It was a street festival here in the neighboring city of Bamberg, Germany. They had their jazz festival going on, and I heard this guy on stage singing, and I kept thinking, is David Byrne from the Talking Heads out here singing? There's no way. And I forced my sister, who had come over for my son's wedding, and my wife to sit with me in the rain of the day and listen to these guys up on stage for the next hour. Afterwards, I purchased the album, met the band, had them autograph the CD, and actually started writing with Tilo, the singer, Tg Copperfield himself. And we've actually written back and forth quite a bit. I'd put us in a good friends category, but hopefully I'll get out there and get to see him again real soon. And like I said, that was They Put Out the Fire from Tg Copperfield's solo album, just released, currently available to purchase. The album is called Magnolia. Check it out. It's really good. We'll have another Tg Copperfield song from his band album coming up later in the show. But first, joining me all the way down in Adelaide, Australia, I need to introduce her. She needs to be heard. She is threatening me with drop bears every single day if I don't introduce her sooner onto the show. We got 42 sitting down in Adelaide, and she's got news about not licking the coins down there.
Oh, yes. Hello, everyone. Yes, there was a story that got posted on Facebook earlier this week. There was some sheep in Western Australia, I believe it was, that were dying from anthrax that was just in the soil because we've had such terrible drought conditions. The soil is being churned up by the stock's feet.
Yeah.
And anthrax is a soil-borne bacteria.
Yeah,
so
that comes from the farm fields in the pasture areas.
Yeah, so, the people who are out there digging for gold and stuff like that, don't put that stuff in your mouth.
Don't be a typical coin licker. Australia, coin lickers are off limits.
Well, that's right. Oh, I've done it myself. And to be fair, I don't think that it would probably apply to your suburban hunting areas. It's probably restricted to more outback Australia.
Yeah.
But
Crocodile Dundee country.
It's been a long time since I studied microbiology, so it could very well be in your backyard. But
yeah, I don't know. I mean, it could be. I mean, I'm sure they move manure out to fertilize areas, so it could be something as simple as bringing all that out there and spraying it across the fields to fertilize the grass, and next thing you know, you got a metal detector dropping dead from licking a coin.
Yeah, look, I can tell you now, if there was a fresh pile of manure being spread out in a field, I don't think I'd be going with it anyway. That's just...
You better not be.
Sanitary.
But, you know...
Definitely not.
I have been doing it. I have been known to be out on these fresh fields metal detecting while the field next to me was being sprayed with, I think it was pig manure. They usually spray it and then turn it up. Manure. And they were doing, it was a rather stinky day. And I came home and I had to shower. In fact, I had to get naked before I came in. The wife would not let me in the house. And,
smart wife.
So, yeah.
You're lucky. If it was me, I would have hosed you down first.
Yeah, well. Yeah, we were living in an apartment building at that time, which means that I had to undress outside the apartment building, which was not something fun.
What time of the year was it?
That would have been spring. I think it was about 3 years ago. Yeah, it was about 3 years ago. We see that
all the time in Australia. People walking around in their undies. It's fine.
Well, yeah, that's normal down under.
Yeah, it's normal.
I've seen.
As soon as winter's over, that's it. We're down to our jocks and socks.
Yeah, I've seen pictures from Bondi Beach. I know exactly what it's like down there. But anyway, we've got a really great show for you guys today. We got a great story coming up. 42 is here with me. As always, I couldn't be happier having her aboard. And we're gonna be doing the shout outs here in a little bit. And first of all, that's the shout outs. So first of all, it's coming up the shout outs. So let's get this done and over with.
It's the GDA shout outs.
All right, who we got lined up this week? I know there's a special one on there.
Yeah, there is. So my first pick for shout out is Wilbur Minor, and that's for being the Find of the Week winner. The 1920s to 1930s Greyhound bus. That was a standout for me. So yeah. I really, really got a kick out of seeing that one. I thought some little kid has probably cried a few tears over that, and that's not why I liked it, but I liked it because it's quite iconic, that Greyhound bus. You know, everybody's been on a Greyhound bus.
Yeah, exactly.
I would say, or at least most people have travelled somewhere on a Greyhound bus, so everybody can have a connection to that and
visualize
it. That thing
was
easy. Huge.
Yeah,
that thing was huge.
Yeah, I saw it on top of the coil. It was unbelievable.
An 11-inch coil. I reckon that was the 11-inch coil.
Yeah, I think so.
I thought that thing was huge. It was pity that the wheels were gone.
But that's actually normal when it comes to a lot of those.
Yeah. I find a lot of cars and stuff that have the wheels missing, but I also find quite a few that have still got them. So it would have been such a treat to have the wheels on there, but it's still a fantastic fun without it.
You're talking about almost 100 years of summers just pounding the ground where that thing was sitting.
Exactly,
so, yeah. The rubber or the plastic or the there was something else before plastic. I can't even remember what it was. Would have just been eaten away.
Yeah. So congratulations on that one, Wilbur. The next one I've got for shout-outs is Lael Bickle, who had a very close runner-up for that Find of the Week for the 1930s man oil die-cast bus Zeppelin. That was an unusual find.
I
don't know if you saw that.
I actually had to download the image and actually rotate it because I couldn't make out what it was, and then I had to do a little bit of research. That thing was unbelievable. It is a beautiful find.
That was really cool too.
Yeah. I just like it because it's just one of those off-the-wall designs, kind of like one of those, like the people who made the Batmobile from 1966, one of those kind of iconic looks. But I just don't understand where that style came from, the Zeppelin-looking bus.
I don't even know if it was an actual bus.
It might not have been. It might have been
made in production that traveled people, transported people across the country.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably exactly what it was. But it was one of those things that, it just seems so weird. The style of it was, the shape was just absolutely unique.
Yeah, you see a lot of that in like the Matchbox cars and stuff today at the shops. They got the great big, I'm not really a car person, so I don't know what they're called, but the extra bits and pieces that they put on the engine and air intakes and flames and, all of these accessories that really pimp up the car.
Yeah.
So I don't know whether that Zeppelin bus was like an early version of that, or whether it was an actual real design.
No,
but it was very cool. I really enjoyed seeing that one.
No, I don't know.
I enjoyed seeing all of the cars.
Yeah, I do too. I do too. I mean, you know me. I really want to. I got a really good toy collection that I'm always trying to update, and I saw somebody that actually picked up an actual 1960s Matchbox Batmobile before the TV show happened. So it was one based on the actual comic books. And I begged and pleaded for the guy to send it to me, but I couldn't get it. But yeah, these things are from the 1930s. Was it dug up
or was it?
It was metal. It was a metal detecting find about 4 years ago. I think it was 3 or 4 years ago. Beautiful, beautiful thing. If I find it, I'll share it on the website. You can find it on the. You'll find it on the story notes there. Just like all these today, you'll find on the story notes. But it turns out the Zeppelin buses were from a company called Manoil from the 1930s. So that's a little bit of information on when that the car was made. They're kind of rare. They're scarce. They're listed as scarce vintage toys.
Oh, okay. Cool. That's cool. Yeah, that was a great find. And my last shout out for this episode is to my brother from another mother. He celebrated a birthday this week, so happy birthday, John Brockelman.
Yeah, well, the sad thing is we both missed it.
I know. Yeah, I feel a bit bad about that.
Yeah, I do too, especially since I was sitting there talking with him for a couple hours yesterday, and I didn't even know that earlier in the week it was his birthday. So, John, I would sing for you, but it's probably a better present that I don't sing happy birthday to you.
I won't be singing with him. Oh, sorry, I won't be singing for him. But I have promised him that when we go out next time that I'll let him find the gold coin.
There you go. So
that's my present.
All right. So, John, happy birthday from the entire GDA crew. We're going to give you a really big shout out this episode. You definitely deserve it. You are the part of the Dayz duo, and totally worth it. Sorry that we missed it, brother.
Yeah, I'll make it up.
All right. And so I want to give a big shout out to my father. I know he's listening in. He started listening ever since we got the website up last week. He's actually tuning in every Monday and listening to the show. So I want to give a big, huge shout out and thank you and love you to my father. He's living in Washington State. He's currently sitting at his house at 80 years old, almost 80 years old, and it's 7 inches of snow outside right now, and it just started snowing again about an hour ago, and they're expecting another 4 to 5 inches of snow. So, yeah, they're almost going to have a foot of snow by the end of the day at their time. So, Dad, hopefully you're not busting your back too much. Stay inside, hire one of those young bucks up and down the street to come shovel your driveway. Don't try and do it yourself. I love you, Dad, but I know you're an ornery guy coming out of Texas. Sometimes you just got to saddle up and ride on and let the young guys lead the herd. All right? Now, find of the week, we did just kind of hit on this a little bit. The find of the week, well, let's just do this real quick.
Yeah.
Now, he was in the shout-outs as well. This bus that you were talking about is absolutely unbelievable. It is massive. Now, everybody knows a Matchbox car. They can kind of picture the size of this thing, but this thing was at least 2 to 3 cars long as far as Matchbox cars. Like you were saying, at least. It was sitting on an 11-inch coil, and it was close to half the size of that coil, at least the length of the coil.
I reckon it's actually over half the size.
The thing is unbelievable.
Yeah.
How this thing got lost to begin with, I don't understand. It's like it's one half size.
It might have been broken and then tossed aside. You never know.
Yeah, it could have been. I mean, looking at it from the photographs, it actually looked really good, in good shape. I was really surprised how it came out of the ground. Like we were talking, typical no wheels, but it came out of the ground. It looked like the paint was still on there, kind of that cream-colored paint. Am I mistaken? Was it a cream color?
I think it's sort of a bluey-greeny color. I think the cream is a bit of the dirt.
And then a little bit of that silver.
It's a little bit difficult to tell.
Yeah. It could have been just silver as well, because Greyhound buses are usually silver with the Greyhound logos on the side. So it could have just been the way the item was photographed that it kind of misleads the eye a little bit. But yeah, really, really great find. I love seeing those old toys. I don't know. Have you found any kind of toys while you've been hunting?
Me? Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I find toy cars quite often. My favourites are actually posted on that particular post. They're and I found them on the same day too. One was let me just pull it up because I forget the names. It's a Lone Star Tough Tots Dodge Dart. It was made in England. I don't have any information about when they were, but they're about a half to 3/4 of the size of a normal Matchbox car. And the other one was a Fun Ho number 43 E-type Jag, which was made in New Zealand. So I've never found a car that's been made in New Zealand before. So that one was pretty special.
That's pretty crazy.
And it's really they fit really nicely in the palm of your hand. They're a little bit smaller than a Matchbox car, but the Dodge Dart actually still has the driver and the windshield.
Oh, really?
It's a convertible. Yeah. It's a convertible, and it still has the driver and the windshield. And I'm pretty sure all of the wheels are still on those cars as well. And they've still got quite a bit of paint. So the Dodge is a bit, they're both a bit dirty, really. I tend not to clean my finds like this, especially if there's paint involved, because that cleaning process just strips away any of the paint. So I tend not to. I might just give it a bit of a rinse over or a brush over with a toothbrush.
Yeah, that's about all I do too.
Leave them as they are.
Yeah, that's about all I do too. It's just, it can handle the water. Obviously, it's been in the ground getting soaked all the time, but, getting that kind of a brush out and just rubbing it, it might actually destroy a lot of the patina.
Pull that paint off. Or if you put it in an ultrasonic, that would probably rip the paint off as well.
Oh, I would never even think about doing that.
Yeah.
No.
I've done that with some things, like the later cars. I would probably do that with, just to give it to a kid or something like that, just to clean it up. I would do that, because those later cars would probably be able to handle it. But with these ones, where you can see the paint is, you can already tell it's starting to flame. It's ready to delaminate from that surface. Yeah, that's that's one of the things. I did find a recent Matchbox cars on one of mine. I've only found 2 toys so far. There was that one. Then I found a 1940s-ish cap gun that was broken, but I could tell you haven't found one of those fidget spinners yet?
No fidget spinners. I know they're everywhere, right?
I found them.
Really?
I found them, this summer after they came out. I think they came out over a summer here.
Yeah, I
found them on the beach.
Yeah, that's about right. They came in style, and then they just started flying off the hands the next year. That sounds about right. Yeah. That was one. I had a couple of them. I have one of those little fidget cubes where you can sit around and flip a switch in your hand the whole time. I actually highly recommend those. Those help pass time, but those fidget spinners I could never understand. Maybe I'm just stupid.
I reckon I stole one from someone because it was pink. because that's my favorite color. The more fluorescent the pink, the better.
The sad thing is that would have been something different if it was the 1980s that you were talking about. You were 6 years old, but you're admitting as a much older woman that you stole a pink one from obviously a kid somewhere.
No, I didn't steal it from a child. Stole it from an adult who was very lucky I didn't steal the hot pink Batman themed one.
Wait, there was
I got told,
that
no,
would have been Batgirl.
Yeah, you can steal this.
Yeah.
If I tell you now, if I find that pink Batman one around the house, I will probably steal it. It's been a year now.
Yeah, I would probably do it too. If it's still around the house, that Batman one would be on my Batman wall.
I'm just trying to think what other sort of toys that I found. I found cap guns.
Yeah, that's
guns. Have you found any cap guns?
Yeah, that's the only other one that I got is about a 1940s, 1950s, maybe early 60s cap gun one. Those TV series were really popular. I just don't know. It was probably an American kid that had it at the swimming area here in town because there was an American base next to it where we found it at one point. So, no, that's all I
found a lot of parts of cap guns, like the barrel or the
main
thing that holds
body,
the bullets.
Yeah. The barrel kind of.
I found three that are what I call mostly intact.
Really? Yeah.
Mine on the pin a bit or the trigger.
Mine was just the chamber area of the gun. The handle was broke off.
The chamber, that's what I'm thinking of. Yeah.
The handle was broke off. The barrel was broke off, but it still had the name on it, and I can't remember. It's outside. I would look it up. But yeah, it was the 1940s, up to 1960s. So one of those things like Roy Rogers kind of thing.
Yeah, I found quite a few. I class them as toy cars, but there's a motorcycle, there's an aeroplane, there's other modes. I found a helicopter once.
Yeah, I'd still classify it as a toy car.
Yeah, they're in that sort of genre, but they're generally the sorts of toys that I find would be the cars. And I've found 3 mostly intact cap guns.
Really?
Was actually one was one that was what do you call it? A keychain one. You can see where there's like a little keychain attachment. It's only an inch.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Maybe
actually.
2 inches long, if that. It's really, really small. A mate of mine found a spud gun once. I was very jealous of that because I had a spud gun as a kid.
Yeah.
And as soon as I saw it, I've just gone, that's a spud gun.
Yeah. Was it still operational?
Very, very excited for him.
Did you pull that?
No, it was missing. It was, you could tell it was a gun, but it was missing the front part that went into the spud.
Oh, okay.
With the trigger and
the
spring
barrel.
would have been.
Oh, it was one of those ones where you pulled the trigger and it shot?
That's
It wasn't the one where you squeezed it together really fast?
I had one of those as a kid. Yeah. I loved it. I thought it was great.
I mean, when I was growing up, you could order them.
My mum didn't want me to have one, but my dad's like, here you go.
They're pretty dangerous. I mean, could you imagine a kid nowadays having one of those?
Yeah. Yeah.
But I remember when we were growing up, you were flipping through the comic books on the last page or just inside the front page. There are always those advertisements where you could get all kinds of stupid things like X-ray glasses.
X-ray vision glasses.
Yeah, or smoke from your fingers.
Invisible ink.
And spud guns were always one of them on there, and I just always wanted one. And finally I got one, and I think it was one of those ones where you could actually, you pull it apart, you stick it in the potato, pull it back out, and you squeeze it together really fast. And I think after the second time it broke.
Oh, no.
Yeah, so my mom refused to ever let me order something from a comic book again.
I can't remember where mine came from. I reckon it was probably like a garage sale or a second-hand shop because it was a second-hand item. The paint wasn't new. The paint had chips on it.
Oh yeah, that's cool.
Yeah,
that's actually really cool. Man, I love talking.
If I looked hard enough, it would probably be still around somewhere. Maybe at my parents.
For those of you who know 42 and me, we're both toy freaks as well, and so we're kind of mixing two worlds together right here.
I'm not as much as a toy freak as what Lance is.
But
my toys tend to be small plastic buildable things.
Yeah, well, I mean, I got a couple of those around here too. I got a TIE fighter I still got to put together. But I got my boxes of all my Lego stuff sitting up in the attic. I don't even have space to put them up anymore. I've got about...
you should just send them to me then.
I got about $600 worth of Star Wars Lego, and I can't even put it up. But anyway.
Yeah, you just have to send it to me. That's fine. I'll do it.
All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to cut off to a commercial. Once that gets done, we're going to be doing a world premiere song. This song is called Right Time, Wrong Place by Dayz Copperfield, the band, from their brand new album, 3 Whiskey. Now, here's a little bit of trivia. Both the Dayz Copperfield solo album and the Dayz Copperfield band album both got released at the same time on Friday, the 8th of February, excuse me. Wait, what day are we?
Don't ask me. I'm on a different time.
Yeah, I'm right. It was Friday the 8th. It was Friday the 8th of February. They both got dropped at the same time. So both a solo and a band album got dropped. So we're going to be listening to the full song, Right Time, Wrong Place by the band Dayz Copperfield in a world premiere release of this song. This has never been heard anywhere in the world. And we'll be back in a few minutes right after this.
Rock metal detecting. Seven Kimmy rock metal detecting. Hey guys, Savin Kimmy here with Girls Rock Metal Detecting. I just wanted to pop in and check in and see how your dig weekend's been going. I don't know if you realize, but I've been having a pretty fortunate one. I've dug 2 Walking Liberty half dollars in the last couple weekends, and I also pulled out a Mercury dime. So I've been pretty lucky. If you want to check that out, get over to Girls Rock Metal Detecting on Facebook. Also check out my YouTube. But I wanted to take this opportunity for those of you that are out metal detecting and didn't have much luck this weekend. I want you to kind of take a moment and remember that it's not always about the finds. Where I met a delightful gentleman by the name of Charles. I stood on the grand front porch of his beautiful New Orleans-style home as Charles slowly opened a large, heavy door in response to my knocking. With a smile on his face, he quickly approved my request to detect his property and confessed to being a metal detectorist himself, as well as a Civil War reenactor. Charles was a friendly man with a very kind face, and all the while detecting his property, he would pop out to talk. He brought his finds and was obviously proud of his Civil War buckle, cannonball frag, buttons, bullets, and other campsite goodies, thrilled to share them with someone who truly appreciated them. He later brought out his tablet computer to share aerial photographs he had taken of a nearby Civil War reenactment. We had a lovely time talking as I puttered around his property, digging up one roofing nail after another. He placed them in a little jar. Why he wanted them, I don't know, other than as a memento of some sort. But I couldn't help but think he was as sentimental about detecting as I am. And when he spoke of his dearly departed wife, I had an overwhelming feeling our visit had somehow brightened his day. When it came time to leave, Charles insisted I take a little button from his fine stash that I had shown interest in, adding it to the only good bits I'd recovered from his yard, a little buckle and a 1930s wheat penny. As it turns out, the best find of the day were the moments spent with this new friend. Sometimes you have to look up from the ground and appreciate what's going on around you. Metal detecting can offer so much more than just finds. Don't forget to stop and appreciate the moments. Take care, everybody, and rock metal detecting.
Well, everybody knows that Rudu's Metal Detector sponsors us, but I want to go ahead and take this time when I'm supposed to be doing a commercial for them, which I still am. Make sure you head on over to rudus.com.pl and check out the website of the Alter 71, the machine that I'm currently using or going to be actually using a lot more this coming summer. Check it out. It's a really great machine. It's one of those professional quality machines at a rate that everybody can afford, actually. It is by far one of the most personalizable machines that there are. So check it out at rudus.com.pl. And what I really want to do is I want to give a huge shout out to Eric over at rudus.com and also to Viola. These two people, Eric and Viola, make it their personal commitment to every single customer of rudus.com to become as personal as possible with each and every one of them. They are a great company. Make sure you check them out. But thank you to both Viola and to Eric. You guys have a great company. You guys really care about the people that you're serving, and you care about the machines that you create. Thank you so much for what you do. All right, that's it for me. Let's get back to the show.
Exclusive hot new mix.
I'm writing songs in the key of A. I'm writing songs in the key of G. None of them made it to the top 10. They only made my fingers bleed. They used to tell me that I shouldn't play loud, and now they tell me rock and roll is out. I'm gonna write a novel about the people talking shit, telling me what it's all about. Farewell, good luck. Whoa, whoa, it's the right time. Wrong place, the right place. Wrong time.
All right, so that was T.G. Copperfield, the band, from their new album, Dayz Whiskey. Just got dropped on the 8th of February, just a couple days ago. And this is a never heard before song. I love this band. I saw them, like I was telling you earlier, in Bamberg for the first time. And he and I are now constantly talking with each other. Great guy. I highly recommend all 4 of his albums, including his solo album, making 5 albums. Definitely check these guys out. Later on in the month, we're going to be having a giveaway for 2 of his first albums, the self-titled T.G. Copperfield album. I have 2 brand new copies of this album to give away to 2 lucky listeners somewhere in the world. So check back in later this month. You will find it on the website, gdapod.com. And you'll find information on how you can win that. So make sure you check that out. But for now, we're going to be going into a little bit of the GDA Find Stories. You ready for this one? Now, here's a question for you. What is Battlefield Archaeology? Do you know what that is?
No, not exactly, but I could hazard a guess.
Okay, go ahead.
People go out looking on old battlefields for relics of the battle?
See, that's where there's a problem. Up till 1983, Battlefield Archaeology didn't even exist. Now, there are things that are called military archaeology, and that's what you're talking about, is the study of objects found on battlefields. But up till 1983, nobody had ever gone to a battlefield and tried to find the actual way that a battle played out based on the evidence on the ground or in the ground. So,
right.
Yeah, we have in 1983, Battlefield Archaeology was created by Dr. Douglas D. Scott, and it began like this. So Scott went out to try to create field methodology to better systematically investigate battlefields. Basically, you go out to the land, you look at the way it's set up, you start checking finds that are in the ground itself to try and figure out how a battlefield or a battle actually moved. Because a battle, just like people and the people that do it, is kind of a living thing. You know, you have the historical records, but when you're thinking about a battle, it moves based on the way that it is reacted to by the people on the ground. So if you investigate a battlefield, you can see exactly how accurate the historic records of, how the historical records of that battle are. So nobody prior to 1983 could accurately interpret what a battlefield was. So in 1983, he created the framework for future archaeologists to more accurately interpret the layout of a battlefield while standing on the site. This allowed a better understanding of how a battle developed and actually gives the archaeologist sometimes the truth in what are glaring inaccuracies in history books. Now, you ask yourself, why was this important? Well, it all comes down to one thing. And how did Dr. Scott first use this? Well, that's a good question, 42. Now I'm giving you the...
How did Dr. Scott use this?
All right, so it came down to a battle that the Native Americans refer to as the Battle at Greasy Grass River. Which to Western civilization is known by a much different name. We call the battle that took place on the morning of the 25th of June, 1876, the Battle of Little Bighorn, and it's also nicknamed Custer's Last Stand. Now, newspapers at the time reported headlines such as "Terrible Battle with Indians, General Custer, 15 officers, and every man of 5 companies slain." It was a big thing back in the time. That was written by the Charlotte Democrat from Charlotte, North Carolina on the 10th of July, 1876. So not entirely too long. You got to think I'm pretty sure there was no Twitter back at the time so they could say, "Dude, this guy just got totally whacked out here on Little Bighorn." So, that was not going on at the time. So it said, everybody said it was the historic and heroic, that's the word I'm looking for, heroic last stand of General Custer with all his men as they gathered on top of this hill and bravely fought off this massive horde of Native Americans, who then massacred and slaughtered them and desecrated their bodies and all kinds of things. So those are the stories that were going around at the time. It became almost a romantic tale of the American West, kind of like Wyatt Earp at the OK Corral, or Billy the Kid, or any of those other Wild West people. General Custer's last stand was one of those things that every household knew at the time in the late 1800s. It's also said that we will never know the real story as there were no survivors, but we know that's complete bull, as thousands of people survived. Most of them were Native Americans, and there were also a couple soldiers who survived after they fled the battle. There were also other soldiers that were there as well. So it became a huge question of, is there truth in the legends and myths of the last stand, or are the stories of the Native Americans the way it actually happened? Because the story of the Native Americans shows a completely different picture. The Native Americans say there was nothing but panic and confusion in the soldiers' ranks, and they've passed the stories from generation to generation, talking about how there was no last stand, rather that the soldiers were scared and panicking and were easily picked off by the Native Americans. And this is what Dr. Scott wanted to investigate, the truth behind the Battle of Little Bighorn. This is where he wanted to first use his idea, his methodology of battlefield archaeology. So in 1983, they went out to Little Bighorn in Montana. He headed out to the battlefield where they know around where the battle took place, because there are headstones of every single one of the cavalry men from the 7th Cavalry. There are headstones located on the ground where each soldier died. This is the only battlefield in the world where the soldiers are buried and marked at the exact location where they actually fell.
Oh, wow.
So you can see exactly how the battlefield was laid out by looking at how the headstones are laid out on the field. So this is why he wanted to use his new methodology on this spot. They could see where the bodies lay. Now it became a question of piecing the puzzle together based on the evidence that they would find. The headstones mark where each body was buried, like I was saying. La-di-da-di-da. I'm obviously reading. So in one spot, headstones were kind of in a line. So if you look at it from one angle, it looks like probably a good 50-yard or 50-meter line of headstones, which makes sense because the cavalry, one of the first things they would do is would create a skirmish line. So it would be a long line of soldiers approximately 5 meters apart, kneeled down and providing fire in the direction of the enemy. And that's what it looks like on the ground. And that's what they thought for 108 years was going on the ground. So they wanted to first find out exactly why this line of headstones was going off in this direction. So they went out there armed with metal detectors. But more, they wanted to find what actually happened there and put to rest the rumors and the myths and the stories, and then to accurately give a voice to the people and the events that happened on the day of 1876. So this is what we know happened that day so far. All right, so in the mid-1800s, the Lakota Sioux were given the land in the Black Hills of Montana, which included the area of Little Bighorn, which is a river that goes through Montana. However, when gold was discovered in the Black Hills in the 1870s, the U.S. government demanded that the Sioux move out, go back to their reservation, so that the white miners who were flocking to the area to mine for the gold could do so without the Native American presence. Now, white America at the time, and I have to put it this way, white America, because you got to remember, this is shortly after the death of President Lincoln, and we're at the end of the Civil War here. And General George A. Custer was a massive hero. He fought in the Battle of Gettysburg. He fought in the Battle of Cemetery Ridge. He was a well-known and well-liked general. But white America at the time, they had dime novels and newspaper stories depicting the bloodthirsty savages which were living on the Great Plains in, the central United States. It is true that just before the events that I'm about to talk about, 2 miners were found dead in an apparent Native American attack, but there were no other provocations for this. They just did not want to leave the land that the U.S. government gave them, and they were constantly moving around with this huge village that was mobile. So they just simply saw the people as an uneducated and feral people, a menace to the country. Stories abounded about how soldiers and outposts would come under attack. Then there were stories about soldiers retaliating by wiping out complete villages of natives, men, women, children, which gathered praise by the public in the United States at the time. But unbeknownst to the people, and this is one of the worst parts of the whole thing, unbeknownst to the people, only one of those stories were true. The systematic... No, just a second. The systematic genocide of the Native American villages throughout the plains by cavalry and U.S. soldiers. So here we have a problem in the Black Mountains of Montana. The Sioux, along with the Northern Cheyenne Indians, were sitting on the land the government had given them. But the government decided that they wanted the land to return to them and that the natives needed to return to the reservations so that the mining could commence. But at the time, Chief Sitting Bull refused to give up the area and was traveling with a massive mobile village of around 1,200 huts. They estimated 1,200 at the time. And kind of go into that a little bit. But in this, they estimated that there were approximately 1,500 Native American warriors located in this mobile village. General George Custer had been following the tracks of this village for some time with the 7th Cavalry Regiment, the supposed best of the best of the U.S. soldiers at the time. These were the men between 18 and 23 years old. They were well-fed, well cared for. They were the smartest, the best, the bravest. However, because of the roughness of the terrain, they couldn't bring with them Gatling guns or artillery as they were following this large mobile village that was led by Chief Sitting Bull. Clusters of Indian scouts then spotted an encampment to the west of the Little Bighorn River. So Custer, with his soldiers, they went up on top of a hill, and when he saw this village, he was completely awestruck by the size. But he decided that instead of waiting for backup, as his own Indian scouts were telling him to do, they were telling him it's way too big. We got to wait for the backup to show up, which was on the way. Custer decided that he was going to go ahead and attack. So what he ended up doing, he had one of his majors, Major Reno, cut an attack from the south side. And he would then move around to the west side and attack from that area there. He headed out into the hills near Little Bighorn and started scanning. This is Dr. Scott again. Dr. Scott went out into the hills near Little Bighorn and started scanning the area with metal detectors. He had collected volunteers to help find an answer to the events of the day with the National Parks Association as well. They found in the 2-year investigation over 5,000 artifacts and pinned the location of every single one of them. It didn't matter what it was. They found bullets, bullet casings, bones, spurs, pieces of horse tack, bones of horses. If they found it, they put a pin flag on every single location during the course of 2 years. Now, a good thing to remember is that the American cavalry at the time, they only carried 45 caliber Springfield breech loader rifles. So a breech loader rifle is a rifle that you lift up the top of the rifle to put a new bullet in, and then you close it, pull the hammer back, and fire. Everybody sees or thinks about those old Western movies where they have the hammer kind of rifles where you cock the hammer, fire, cock it again, fire, cock it again, fire. Everybody knows those. But this was something new to the cavalry because they had limited space. So what this let them do is they carried a belt on them where they had bullets actually on the belt around their waist. And so they'd fire around, they'd lift up the lever, the casing would eject out, they'd put the new bullet in, close it, and be able to fire. So I don't know why they decided to use these, but it was a Springfield, so I guess they had the contract for the military at the time. So it was pretty easy to figure out exactly what was going on, and I'll get to that in a second. But on the other hand, the Native Americans had multiple different types. Any kind of weapon they could trade for at trading posts, anything they could, get off the bodies of dead soldiers or from previous attacks, anything that they could collect. They had a lot of different kinds of weapons. So locating the position of where the cavalry troops were and the Native Americans became pretty clear when they started locating impacted bullets in the ground. And that only means that, if you find a large collection of 45 bullets in the ground, that means that a soldier was firing right in that area. Because you can imagine. But if you find another area where there's multiple different types of bullets in the ground, that means that the Native Americans were shooting at that area and the bullets were landing in the ground right at that spot. So they were able to figure out, okay, this is where one of the cavalry soldiers was, this is where one of the Native Americans were. Cavalry position had high numbers of multiple types of projectiles on the grounds. And the numbers started making the archaeologists go, exactly what's going on here. So they decided at that time to begin a forensic type investigation into the number of weapons used at the scene and in Little Bighorn. What they ended up doing is they compared ejected shell casings found on the ground so that they could estimate how many specific types of guns were used by the number of different firing pin marks found on the same type of casing. So if you got the cavalry guys all shooting the same type of round, and like forensic files, you see the firing pin makes a specific kind of indentation on the bullet casing, and it's that weapon will make the exact same type of indentation every single time it fires a gun, because it might have a bullet. It might have a slight nick in the firing pin. You know what I'm saying? So that nick you can see every single time it fires. And so they started locating bullet casings on the ground and started collecting every single one of them and marking every single location where it was found. And like I said, by the time they had over 5,000 pin flags in the ground. And we're not talking about just relics. We're talking about shell casings as well. It was found that there were 45 different types of weapons being used by the Native American warriors. And based on that, 800 of them were armed with rifles and pistols, which is much more than they previously thought. In fact, this provided the archaeologists the first clue to the truth of what happened that day. The truth is, General Custer was outgunned 4-1.
Wow.
Could you imagine that? For every single cavalry soldier rifle, there were 4 Native Americans, and they had the faster operating weapons. And I'll get to that here in a little bit. Dr. Scott then investigated thousands of cartridges of the cavalry to view the movements of the soldiers in the battle, or at least the areas where the weapons were used in the battle. So they located and were able to say, okay, this bullet casing went to gun A. This bullet casing went to gun C. Oh, look, this bullet casing goes back to gun A. They marked however many guns there were used by the cavalry soldiers by only the impacts of the firing pins on the casings. And they could see on a map where that gun moved across the battlefield. That kind of concentration into the detail is just unbelievable to me. I love this stuff. He investigated thousands of cartridges used by the cavalry to view the movements. So because of this, Dr. Scott created and his creation of the Battlefield Archaeology, and armed with the invaluable aid of metal detectors, finally told the story of the 7th Cavalry on the morning of the 25th of June. It was discovered that, as they were saying, a skirmish line had been created by the cavalry. Yet, when the overwhelming numbers of the warriors began attacking, the right wing of the cavalry line started to disintegrate. They started moving back into the area of where General Custer was on the hill, and en route they started clustering together in large groups. That's when they were easily slaughtered. When this began to happen, the time of the soldiers had officially been numbered, basically. The use of metal detecting and archaeologists hand in hand on the battlefield archaeology on modern battlefields showed the truth of what had happened. Custer ignored the news from his Indian scouts who had said that his soldiers had already been spotted and told Major Reno to attack from the south of the village. Reno's attack was held off by the warriors in the village, and the women and children began to flee. Seeing this, General Custer then decided to chase them down. The natives then in turn cut off General Custer, and that's when the battle between the two was imminent. The cavalry then picked up a skirmish line, normal practice for them at the time. Each man 5 meters apart, and shortly after is when the right wing began to fail by the Native Americans, who they had a style of fighting that was individual. They didn't believe in the normal military style, everybody stand in the line and fire at the enemy. They just attack as they want willy-nilly because they're trained hunters is exactly what they are. But because of this breach, because the breech-loading Springfield rifle was much slower than the lever-action rifles that the natives had, they were easily overcome in close quarters. And then with pistol, axe, knife, and mallet, the cavalrymen were just easily slaughtered. What they ended up doing is they'd take those mallets and hit the cavalry soldiers in the arms to knock the guns out of their hands or break their arms so that they could no longer use them. It was a matter of chaos almost from the onset of contact with the Native Americans for the cavalry soldiers. It was found that the soldiers were firing in all directions, but not covering a single direction of fire, which allowed the natives easy avenues of approach right up to the soldiers. Eventually, they were surrounded. After Custer was killed, the remaining men dropped their weapons and attempted to run for the river, where they were easily chased down and killed by the natives. What is known as Last Stand Hill, which is the area, you'll see photos of it on the website. Head over to gdapod.com. You'll see photos of Last Stand Hill. It's the largest number of tombstones gathered in a small area and has been referred to as Last Stand Hill. What was actually found to not be the heroic stand of the soldiers of General Custer ended up just simply being the fact that it was an area where they had very few cavalry shell casings, but an extremely high number of Native American bullets. It turned out this Last Stand Hill was a place where everybody ran back to because that's where the general was. They were, I guess, expecting some kind of control and confidence from the general himself. But once he died, that's when everything just went down. all this together means that the legends and the stories of the heroic last stand were completely fabricated. There was no last stand. From the beginning, General Custer's men were outnumbered, outgunned, and faced an opponent that was comfortable and proficient in hunting individually, be they prey, animal, or man. The storybooks will now accurately reflect the confusing minutes that the Battle of Little Bighorn took place in. And with the help of metal detectors on the battlefield, alongside with archaeologists, the truth of the final day of the men of the 7th Calvary have been found. On that day in 1983, Battlefield Archaeology was officially created, and it's still used to this day to better understand the truth in battlefields around the world. It ended up Dr. Scott was given an award by the National Parks Association for his work in discovering the truth behind the Battle of Little Bighorn. So that's it. Metal detectors, it ended up being, they went out there. I was looking at photos of this, and they went out there with approximately 24 to 25 White's metal detectors. You know that old one with the handle that curved up right around the top of the metal detector? The kind that Grandpa used to have in his shack.
I'm not sure if I'm familiar with that. I might have to look that one up.
You might need to look that up. The handle actually kind of curved from the back right over the large control box, and that you can see photos.
Oh, yeah.
I'll share photos of them metal detecting out there.
That'd be good.
Yeah, it's really good.
So this was in the 80s, right?
Yeah, it was 1983 when they actually developed this new thing, and it's really unbelievable exactly what they were able to determine and how they were, right on the spot. They were like, maybe we can bring forensic archaeology into this. And they started, to me, the fact that they started looking at every single bullet case to find out which gun fired which. They could actually literally tell you where a Native American went around and was shooting his rifle from based on where the rounds, the shell casings were located on the ground.
Wow.
They were able to find, they tracked one soldier as he was, obviously where it was set up on the skirmish line. They found, I think it was 5 casings on the ground. And then they found another bullet from him about 50 yards away. And then another bullet about 50 yards away from that as he was trying to run down to a cut in the valley there. Then they were also able to identify a soldier from the bones, which was kind of crazy because when the soldiers that came about 36 hours after the battle had come, they were the ones that buried them and put the markers on the ground for the soldiers. When they came, they noted that one of the soldiers, I can't remember exactly, John something, they noted that he had been shot in the hip as well as a couple other places. They found the bones of a soldier who had suffered a gunshot to the pelvic bone, which then perforated his large intestines, and he would have died slowly. But they found that he had then been hit over the head with a mallet and stabbed a couple times as well, also shot in the wrist. But they were able to accurately identify this as being the one person that they knew the true name of, identified just by the wounds that he occurred during the Battle of Little Bighorn, which is 108 years after the battle. Just an unprecedented thing to happen.
Yeah, wow. I mean, I'm seeing pictures of the headstones that you were talking about on that hill, and it's all sort of fenced off. Were they detecting on the headstone side of the fence only? They had to in the other side as well.
What you're looking at, you can see that large collection that's fenced off. That is Last Stand Hill. That's actually where the last of the men fell. General Custer was right there as well. But what you're missing is that usually from the direction where they take that photo, so that you'll see the big square memorial sitting on top of the hill there.
No, I'm looking at a photo that's at that memorial looking down the hill.
Okay, so if you're looking down the hill, as it goes down to the right, you can kind of see a couple headstones heading off to the right-hand side, and there's like one or two that you can see off in the distance that seem to be by themselves. And it ended up being, those were the men, the ones that are by themselves, those are the guys that were trying to flee the battle. They were trying to run away. They had just been buried where their bodies had been. And you can see that there's a line that kind of cuts off to the front right as you're looking down the hill from the memorial. And that's that line that they originally thought was a line of skirmish. They thought that's the line that the cavalrymen had made to fight, and that's where the men had fallen. But it ends up, the line of skirmish was actually at the end of that line, and as the natives started coming in, that's the line that started falling apart. And as you start looking, coming back from the far end up toward Last Stand Hill, you'll see that there's usually one or two, and then every once in a while you'll see like three collected together, and then 1, 2, and then maybe 4. And that's what was happening.
So they're on the other side of the fenced area?
Yeah, exactly. They're on the other side of the fenced. There's gravestones that cover a good quarter mile in any direction.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a large area. And what had happened is that's that line that you see right there that had broken, and they were trying to run back toward the general's location right there on Last Stand Hill, and they'd end up clumping together, and the Indians were able to mow them down a lot easier since it was a much larger target with 2, 3, 4 men standing there together. So, and that's what had happened. It was just chaos on the battlefield. It ended up, they started looking at the men, the bones that they were actually finding on the ground. And they said that the soldiers in the 7th Cavalry were the best of the best. They, between 18 and 23 years old, well-fed men. They were the strong men. But the bones started telling a different story. They started finding out that a lot of the men were 16 years old.
Oh, wow.
You had men who had arthritis at 20-something years old from riding the horses. A lot of the men had spinal injuries because of riding the horses. The cushions between the vertebrae had been almost completely worn away. And it was now bone smashing on bone as they were riding the horses. So these men, and they also found out that almost all of them were malnourished. So all these rumors and things that are said about the 7th Cavalry being the best of the best, absolutely well fed, and between 18 and 23, for the most part, that was completely wrong. These men, Or is that actually relative? Like they were well fed for the time, perhaps? Well, that's what everybody's trying to say. But if these are supposed to be the men that are supposed to be the strongest, the best of the best, like the special forces for their time, they couldn't find it. And there were soldiers dead on the ground 2 years younger than they were supposed to be. And a lot of them were a lot older than what they were supposed to be. So there was almost nobody within that 18 to 23-year-old range, and they said it was amazing how many of them were suffering from arthritis, especially for their age. So that would have made, maybe holding a rifle or running hard because they couldn't run because it would hurt their backs as they were doing it.
Yeah.
It's just incredible, these things.
And so the bones that they were finding, were they on the surface of the ground?
Because the soldiers, about 36 to 48 hours later, they had come in and buried every single soldier where they lay. That's where the stories of the brutality that had been conducted to the cavalry soldiers started coming. Men were talking about them being completely brutalized and actually completely massacred on the ground. But it ended up being, Native Americans might have come up. There was a soldier that was bleeding on the ground, so he hit the guy over the head with a mallet, put him out of his misery kind of thing. or they would have seen another one and they didn't have a mallet, so they stabbed them. Native Americans, they preferred that really close in kill. I can't remember exactly what they say it was about that, but they prefer that really close in kill rather than to the long distance rifle shots. And so if they're going to put somebody out of their misery, that's what they're going to do. They're going to come right in there and put them out of their misery 1-to-1. So what might be to the Native Americans, somebody getting put out of their misery, might to the soldiers coming in a day later look like an absolute massacre. So, and they ended up.
One question I also have about this, Lance, is I know this is 1983. I was quite young, so I don't know what the metal detecting community was doing then. But where is this? Is this a public place that you're not allowed to metal detect normally? You need special permission?
It's a national park.
You know, if somebody wanted to do this today, chances are you're not going to find half the amount of those casings.
I would absolutely make sure that you check with the National Parks Services in the United States before you even think about going out there, because this is a national park. This is the Little Bighorn National Park. Do not try and go out there and metal detect on your own. They on a couple of the documentaries I was watching, they had archaeologists out there with metal detectors, and they're still finding shell casings. And one of the documentaries I saw, they actually found one of the 45 caliber rounds from the soldiers actually on Last Stand Hill. So that means that somebody was shaking so bad they couldn't even get that round into that gun.
Yeah.
It ended up falling out of their hand into the ground. And who knows, that could have been the last thing that person had done. And they found that during the filming of this documentary. It was a great thing, one of those things. And I would just leave this area alone. Let the archaeologists do it. If you happen to be on the list of them to come out and help them investigate even further, do it. I mean, from 1983 to I think this documentary that I watched was filmed 5 years ago, they're still finding stuff. There is that much out there. I mean, you're talking about close to 300 Calvary men died that day, and I think they calculate around 400 of the Native Americans died that day. So there are 700 bodies out there, and they're still spread out over the battlefield. It's one of those crazy things.
What about the horses?
Well, I couldn't find much about the horses. Now, the Native Americans said that what they did is they took all the weaponry from the battle, if it was still usable. If it wasn't, they took them and then buried them somewhere further away. Little Bighorn, I'll share a photo of Chief Sitting Bull, the guy who led this attack. The photo that I'm going to share on the website is 6 years after the attack. So it's, I think, 1883 when the photo was actually taken. So you can see the determination in this guy. These people, they ended up getting away. They survived. They went back to the reservation. But, the damage had been done. The talking about the people had been done. The good news is we were fastly approaching the end of the Wild West. The turn of the century was about to come. And it's not that I'm saying that white America was much better with the Native Americans. Even today, we're not good with them at all. You could almost consider it kind of the American mirror of Australians and the Aborigines. It is not a good standing the way that we treat them, or especially at the time, just massacring them because they were on land that we wanted to take. And then, that they'd been sitting on for 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 years. So it's just one of those things. It's, that's why I keep saying things like white America at this time, because that's what it was. It was, the belief back in the 1800s that we are better than everybody else. And What we say is absolute biblical. It has to happen. If we find gold in an area, everything needs to move away. We're taking that spot. If there's Native Americans there, that means they're breaking the law. We're going to just massacre them and just move on. It's better to get rid of the problem completely than have to deal with it later on. So,
yeah.
Sad as it is, it's how it was. And this is...
Well, it's interesting that the historical record has been altered now.
Yeah, completely. Yeah. Because they were saying at the time there were no survivors, so nobody could tell the tale. But Major Reno's people were there. They didn't actually see the battle that killed General Custer, but they came and rode up on the bodies as they lay on the ground. So they knew something bad had happened. There were 31 people who survived with injuries that day out of 346, I believe it was, a total number. I could be completely wrong. 32 people survived with injuries. Of those, 9 of them would succumb to their injuries later on. So they were able to tell their story, but nobody wanted to hear the stories that were happening. And the ones that survived, they're not going to sit there and tell you, yeah, we did this. We were stupid and decided to chase them down. They're not going to say that our line broke down and we just started scattering in all directions. They're going to say we were fighting for our lives on that hill. It was our last stand. And the general said this had to happen. And that's what everybody believed. But at the same time, like I was saying at the beginning, the Native Americans were like, no, they were scattered. There was complete confusion and chaos on the ground. We were just able to pick them off one by one like you wouldn't believe. So that's where Dr. Scott decided that he wanted to really look in to this specific thing to find out if his Battlefield Archaeology would be able to locate the truth of what actually happened. And in the course of 2 years, he completely changed the history books about what happened that day at the Battle of Little Bighorn. General George Custer, this hero, ended up dying on a hilltop, and it wasn't a last stand. He wasn't in a heroic thing. It was a cowardly thing he was doing, trying to chase down these women and children that were trying to flee. He got cut off and cut down, which, if it had happened, if the tables had been turned, if Native Americans had attacked a white village or a white settlement, and the women and children had started running off and the Native Americans were chasing them, the cavalry soldiers would have just completely laid waste to them as well. But, the history books in this case, because the color of the skin, it truly annotated who the villain was on that day. So that's it. That's all I'm going to do about any kind of... I'm not doing a deeper dive into that. But yeah, it's a really great, it's one of those great American pieces of history. The answer was solved. The riddle is closed. We can now look in history books and find the actual truth of what happened in 1876. It was,
and thank goodness for metal detectors. That's all I can say.
Yeah, and it's really great seeing one of those stories where metal detectors and archaeologists were able to operate hand in hand with each other to locate the truth of what had actually happened out there. It's a really good story, and I think
the archaeologists just went down to the local club and said, "Hey, can you help me out?"
Dr. Scott was sitting there drinking a beer. He's like, "I got an idea."
He just went on to the bulletin board. Wanted metal detector.
So yeah,
must have metal detector for fun and good times.
And maybe dead people.
Well, I can tell you now, if I saw something like that, I would jump at that chance.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why I'm glad I'm in Europe. I'm hoping I'll get some.
My metal detector. No, let me bring my metal detector.
That's the correct answer.
Here's one for you.
Shut up, take my metal detector. Wait, with me.
Yes, that's right. Shut up and take me with my metal detector, and I will help you.
All right. So I think we're coming to the end of the show, ladies and gentlemen. This has been a really good one. I hope you really enjoyed the story about Little Bighorn and finding a little bit of the truth, and the story of Dr. Scott and the invention of Battlefield Archaeology. It's one of those things I love. I love hearing the stories of when things between archaeologists and metal detectors just, are nailed down perfect. So, 42, what you got going on this week?
This week?
Yeah.
Metal detecting.
Heading out
Funnily enough.
You're heading out in a couple minutes, aren't you?
Yeah, I will be very shortly. And then I will probably go to work and daydream about metal detecting.
Yeah, I got to go back to the doctor this week, find out what's going on with my knee. Hopefully I can get back out metal detecting this year. I think I'm going to just say, forget the doctors. I'm going to go out, and that'll be in about a week or two, so we'll see.
Oh, cool.
That's it from me.
Yeah, because I haven't seen many of your finds out there, Lance.
I know. I cleaned up my box. I cleaned up my finds box. I got 3 trays open for 2019. And I'm going to drag my wife out there. We're going to try and find something around here that's really good. And I'm going to get
you're taking the missus as well?
Yeah, she likes metal detecting. She just doesn't have a lot of time to do it. So it's going to be great getting her out there. But
yeah, good. Well, I wish you gold.
Yeah, me too. That'll do it for this week.
Your year for gold.
It is 2019, the year of gold. Also the year of the pig, but anyway.
This is true. All
right, ladies and gentlemen, that's going to be it from us at GDA Radio Podcast. We'll see you guys in exactly 1 week. Make sure you check us out at gdapod.com, the brand new website. You want to see the photos of everything we were talking about today, the find of the week, all the way up to the Battle of Little Bighorn. I'm going to include a really large photo collage on there that you can dig through to see the actual battle site, the people out there digging stuff up. It's really interesting stuff. Head on over to gdapod.com and check that out under show notes on the links. Also check us out on Instagram at Global Detection Adventures. You can find me on Twitter at Lance Goolsby, all one word. And make sure if you're going to share any of your finds, use the hashtag on both GDA Pod, just like our website, GDA Pod. See, we're keeping it simple on this whole thing. See, I can get smart every once in a while. But also check us out on Facebook, Global Detection Adventures, and join the group. Start sharing the finds and let us know exactly what you found out there metal detecting. We'd love to take a look. And with luck, next week you'll be the find of the week. But that's it. Have I forgotten anything? Any of our social media?
Well, I don't think so. I don't do Twitter, so you won't find me there.
That's me. But also check out, if you're so inclined, check out my Geek Podcast. There is another. You can find the links right on the GDA Pod. TIA is the link on there. Just go on there, click that button, head on over to the other show. That's 2 podcasts for the price of 1 every week. But until next week, we'll see you guys out on the field. My name is Lance Goolsby, joined by 42 in Adelaide, Australia. Let's dig it up, y'all. This show was produced by the TIA Podcast Network.